Your boss sends a 2-word message at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Can we talk? That's it. No context, no emoji. Just those 3 words sitting in your notifications like a lit fuse. And within 30 seconds, your brain has already written the whole story. You're getting fired. Or maybe it's worse than that. The project failed, someone complained, the whole thing is falling apart. You spend the next 2 hours rehearsing your response to a conversation that hasn't happened yet. And when Monday comes, it turns out she just wanted to move your one-on-one to Thursday. If you know that spiral, if you've lived inside it, or if you love someone who disappears into their own head, the moment something is uncertain, then what you're about to hear is going to feel uncomfortably accurate. Because this isn't anxiety. This isn't pessimism. This is catastrophizing. And it runs on a system so old, it predates language itself. And the last sign, the one almost nobody talks about, is the one that quietly costs you the most. There is a name for the engine underneath all of this: negativity bias. It's a term coined through decades of psychology research, most rigorously studied by Roy Baumeister, who found that bad events hit the brain roughly twice as hard as equally good ones. Not because something is wrong with you, because something once kept you alive. Your ancestors, who assumed the rustle in the grass was a predator, survived to have children. The ones who assumed it was just the wind did not. So your brain inherited a threat detection system calibrated for a world full of actual predators, and now it's running that same software in a world full of Slack notifications and ambiguous text messages. The system still works. It's just working in the wrong neighborhood now. Think of it like a smoke alarm installed inside a burning building. At first, that alarm was perfectly calibrated. But then the building got safer, and nobody recalibrated the alarm. So now it goes off when you're just making toast. The alarm isn't broken. It's loyal. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is the environment changed and the alarm didn't. That's catastrophizing, not a character flaw. A loyalty problem. Your brain being fiercely devoted to a version of the world that no longer exists. Sign 1. The gap fills itself. Anytime there is missing information, your brain does not leave the gap empty. It fills it. And it fills it with the worst available option. Your partner is quieter than usual at dinner, they must be pulling away. A friend doesn't respond to a message for 6 hours, they're angry, or you said something wrong, or the friendship is silently ending. A doctor says, we just want to run a few more tests, and your brain has already started writing a diagnosis. This is not imagination running wild. This is your threat detection system doing its actual job, which is to model danger before it arrives so you can respond faster. The problem is, it has no filter for probability. It treats possible and likely as the same thing. If something bad could happen, the system flags it as happening. That's the gap-filling mechanism, and once you name it, you'll start catching it in real time. Sign 2. Your body believes the story before your brain finishes writing it. This is the part that makes catastrophizing so exhausting. You're not just thinking about the worst case, you're living in it physically. Heart rate up, shoulders tight, stomach doing something it shouldn't. You might be sitting completely still in a perfectly safe room, and your nervous system is in full emergency mode because the threat your brain invented felt real enough to trigger a physical response. Psychologists call this somatic anxiety, the body acting on thoughts as though they were events. A useful shorthand. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between imagining a car crash and being in one. The emotional and physical charge is almost identical. So when you spiral for 2 hours over a text message, you are not overreacting. You are genuinely exhausted because your body just survived something, even if that something only existed in your head. If that's already 2 out of 2, stay with me, because here is something you can use right now before we go any further. When you catch your brain filling a gap with disaster, ask one specific question. What is the most boring explanation for this? Not the most optimistic, the most boring. Your boss probably wants to reschedule. Your friend probably fell asleep. The test is probably routine. The boring explanation is almost always correct, and framing it as boring rather than positive makes it feel more credible to a brain that doesn't trust cheerfulness. Try it once today. You'll be surprised how quickly it interrupts the spiral. Sign 3. You argue against your own relief. Someone tries to reassure you and something in you resists it. They say, I'm sure it's fine, And instead of feeling better, you feel almost irritated. Because your brain is not looking for reassurance, it's looking for certainty. And since certainty is almost never available, reassurance feels like a trick. Like someone handing you a blanket and telling you the fire isn't real. This is one of the most misunderstood things about people who catastrophize. From the outside, it looks like stubbornness or negativity. From the inside, it feels like staying alert. Letting go of the worst-case scenario feels dangerous, like lowering your guard right before the thing you feared actually arrives. So you hold on. Not because you want to suffer, because suffering feels like preparation. Sign 4. You catastrophize about catastrophizing. This one is the quiet one. You notice the spiral starting, and then you spiral about the fact that you're spiraling. Why do I always do this? What is wrong with me? This is exhausting everyone around me. I'm going to push people away. And suddenly there are 2 fires to manage instead of 1. The original uncertainty and the self-judgment layered on top of it. This is the sign that tends to do the most long-term damage, because it turns a neurological pattern into a personal verdict. You stop seeing catastrophizing as something your brain does and start seeing it as something you fundamentally are. That shift from behavior to identity is where the real cost lives. And that cost is worth being specific about, because it's not just the 2 hours you lost on a Friday afternoon. It's the conversations you didn't have because you'd already decided how they'd go. The opportunities you didn't take because your brain had already written the failure. The relationships where you stayed at a careful distance because intimacy felt like handing someone a map to everything that could hurt you. The version of yourself that would have been more present, more spontaneous, more willing to not know how something ends, that version gets slowly edited out. Not dramatically. Quietly. One avoided situation at a time. Here is how you start taking the wheel back. Step 1. Name the process, not the content. When you catch the spiral, don't engage with the specific fear, don't argue with it, don't fact-check it, don't try to prove it wrong. Just say, out loud or in your head, my brain is pattern matching for threats right now. That's it. You're not dismissing the feeling. You're correctly labeling the mechanism. Research on emotional labeling, particularly from Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, shows that naming what's happening neurologically reduces the amygdala's activation. You are literally turning down the alarm by identifying it as an alarm. Step 2. Shrink the time frame. Catastrophizing almost always involves the future. It's a projection, not a perception. So pull yourself back to the smallest possible window. Not what happens if this goes wrong, but what is actually true right now in this room, in this moment. Your boss sent a message. That is a fact. Everything after that is a story. Keep the facts and set the story down, not permanently, just for now. Step 3, and this one is for the people who love someone who catastrophizes. Stop trying to fix the content of the fear. Don't argue with the specific disaster they've imagined. Instead, acknowledge the feeling underneath it. That sounds really unsettling. Lands differently than, I'm sure it'll be fine. One validates the experience, the other accidentally signals that the feeling is wrong. You don't have to agree with the worst-case scenario to take the person seriously. Those are 2 completely different things. Here is the reframe that changes everything. The same brain that fills every gap with danger is also the brain that thinks 10 steps ahead, that catches what others miss, that takes preparation seriously enough to be genuinely reliable. Catastrophizing and conscientiousness run on the same engine. The vigilance that exhausts you is the same vigilance that makes you someone people trust in a crisis. Someone who actually reads the fine print. Someone who shows up. You were not handed a broken brain. You were handed a sensitive one. A high-resolution threat detector in a world that mostly doesn't need it anymore, but occasionally, absolutely does. The rustle in the grass is usually just wind, but you are always going to be the one who checked.